Hello and welcome to this guide for photoshopping iCloud style aluminium icons brought to you by photoguides.net. Before we begin, be sure to check out the Photo Guides book. It's a complete beginner's guide to photography that's designed to teach you everything you need to know and then let you have fun with your camera. To find out more, head over to photoguides.net/book. Today, we're going to learn how to create this incredible iCloud style aluminium icon, which was used extensively throughout Apple's iCloud keynote. This here is the icon we've created in the tutorial, and as you can hopefully see, it is incredibly similar to the original. What's more is that it only takes a few minutes and it is very simple to do. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is of course create a new document. I'm going to be setting the width and the height both to 1000 pixels. I suggest you use these same dimensions so that way the other figures and numbers I give you throughout the tutorial will also apply. Hit OK, and the first thing we're going to do is select the rounded rectangle tool. Set the radius to 120 pixels and then draw yourself a nice rounded square in the center of your canvas. To create the aluminium look, we're going to need our icon to be a light grey, so I've set the icon to the color B4, B4, B4. Next, we're going to be creating the gradients that will give our aluminium its shine. We'll first need to right-click on our button layer and select Rasterize Layer, and then right-click once again and select Blending Options. We're then going to add a gradient overlay, set the blend mode to overlay, the style to angle, and then we're going to click on the gradient so that we can customize it. You can click underneath the gradients to add new stops. We need to add an odd number of these stops. I'm going to start off by adding 7. It's best that the stops aren't evenly spread as well. Mix up the spacing a bit to make the gradient look a bit more natural. We're then going to need to alternate the colors of these stops. So double click on the second stop and change the color to white. Then on the third, double click it and change the color to black. Continue this until you've completed the sequence of black, white, black, white, black. Bear in mind that both the first and the last stop need to be the same color, in this case black. That way the gradient will blend into itself. As you can see, we've already created an incredible brushed aluminium lighting effect. I'm just going to add 2 more stops and fiddle around with the spacing. Hit OK and then set your opacity to around 60%. We're next going to add a third dimension to this icon, so select Bevel and Emboss, change the style to Inner Bevel, and the technique to Hard Chisel. I unfortunately didn't set it to Hard Chisel in the screencast, but I do recommend you set it to Hard Chisel because it makes the bezel look solid and not smooth. Set the depth to 100%, make sure the direction is set to up, the size to around 10 pixels. And then we're going to change the angle to 90 degrees with the altitude to 40 degrees. The shading should be alright with both opacities set to about 75%, but you can still fiddle around here just to make it look more natural. Next, we're going to create the aluminium texture. So we're going to start by creating a new layer, which I'm going to rename Aluminium Texture. We're then going to select the Paint Bucket tool, and paint the color B4, B4, B4 onto our canvas, the same light grey we used on the icon. Next we're going to go Filter, Noise, Add Noise, set the amount to about 7 or 8%, the distribution to Gaussian, and select Monochromatic. Tap Enter, and now we're going to go Filter, Blur, Radial Blur, set the amount to 50, the blur method to spin, and the quality to best. Hit OK, and then you'll see that our noise is spun in a brushed aluminium style. It may not be overly distinct at the moment though, so we're going to adjust the curves. So go Image, Adjustments, Curves, and then change the shape of the curve in a similar way to what I'm doing here. What we're essentially doing is making the darker tones a lot stronger, so that the strokes in our aluminium layer will be a lot more distinct. Hit OK, and then we're going to Control or Command click the button layer in order to select it on the canvas. And then with the aluminium texture layer selected, we're going to click Add Layer Mask. This then will hide all portions of the texture layer that aren't on the button, so that we don't apply the texture to the background as well. All that's left to do now is change the blending mode of the aluminium texture layer to overlay. And there we have our brushed aluminium style icon. Next, we're going to be adding our iCloud logo. You can download a copy of this logo over on PhotoGuides, which has already been prepared for use in this tutorial. Simply open it up and drag it onto the canvas. Any image or graphic you're using at this point will need to be a dark grey in colour. I annoyingly haven't changed it to dark grey until a bit later on, but it's best that you do it now. It's also best that you don't use the colour overlay tool to change the colour, because we're going to be applying some gradients later on. But anyway, once your graphic is on your canvas, right click it and select blending options. Select bevel and emboss, and then the crucial step, we're going to change the style to emboss. We're then going to set the direction to down, the depth to about 150%, and the size to around 10 pixels. The shading's angle and altitude should be the same as what you've used for the icon. As for the opacity, I'm going to increase the white and decrease the black, but this is entirely based on the eye, so there are really no set figures I can give. Hit OK, and we're now going to add some texture to this embedded logo. And we're going to start by simply dragging this logo layer below the aluminium texture layer. Next, we're going to continue this aluminium shine on our indentation. To do this, we're going to have to go back to our icon layer and open up the gradient overlay blending options. We're then going to click on our gradient, type in a new name, and then click New. This then will save our custom gradient for use on other layers. Then we're going to go back to our logo layer, open up the blending options, click Gradient Overlay, click on the gradient to customize it, and then select the gradient we've just saved. We're then going to have to go back and change the type to angle, and then adjust our opacity. I'm going to set the opacity to around 10% here because I think the subtle shine looks a lot nicer. And that's all there is to it. I have since made a few minor tweaks, such as increasing the size of the cloud logo, and then a few changes to the shading values. But otherwise, in a few minutes, we've created an iCloud style aluminium icon that is pretty much exactly the same as Apple's original. This has been another PhotoGuides tutorial. Also be sure to check out the PhotoGuides book. It's a complete beginner's guide to photography that's designed to get you up and running and then to excel with your photography, all for just $17. Check it out over at photoguides.net/book. As always, PhotoGuides members can download the high-definition version of this tutorial as well as the Photoshop source files, and remember, it is free to join. That's all for today, but you can always head over to PhotoGuides for even more photography and Photoshop tutorials. I'm Ash Davies from photoguides.net.